X-23 is the next card to join Marvel Snap, and it is probably one of the most hyped up cards that I have seen in a while. Basically, everybody's been telling me in the comments that this is the card they're saving up their tokens, saving up their spotlight caches for, and they believe is going to be the strongest card of the month. I'm inclined to agree, but there is a few little things that I want to talk about this card that I think everyone should be aware about. So we're going to cover the mechanics, pros, cons. I got some deck lists that I brewed up for you guys here today, and some counters if you decide to not pick up this card and want to just counter it while everyone else is picking it up and playing destroy decks next week. Look out. But what is X-23? Well, she's a 1/2. When this is discarded or destroyed, regenerate it at a random location and you get +1 energy next turn. Very reminiscent of the Muramasa shard from Dakin that we just saw early on in the season pass, and also her dad, Wolverine, or clone. I don't know the exact lore, but there you go. So look at the spotlight caches as well. Silk coming in with an amazing spotlight variant. So if you already own Silk, I think this is a pretty nice fallback because that's my favorite variant of hers. It looks so good. And then you got Nebula as well, and an amazing Ryan Gonzalez variant. Looks amazing. So the value here is really strong, and they're both Series 5 cards, so equivalent of 6,000 tokens. So it's like pretty much a win-win, especially if you don't own these cards. Now, a big PSA, if you plan on opening spotlight caches to get the new card, save up 4. That's going to guarantee you to get the new card. Otherwise, you're gambling. You're taking a chance. And then if you hit it on the first spotlight cache, well, you have 3 left over that you can save for another week, or you can try and go for those variants or another new card if you don't own them. So there you go. That is X-23, guys. I am pretty amped for this card. It looks a lot of fun. But let's get to the mechanics to see how this card is going to function in Marvel Snap. All right, now on a surface level, X-23 seems pretty simple. We've seen this with a Series 1 card in Wolverine, right? Get destroyed, discarded, it regenerates, it goes to a random spot, etc., etc. But there's a couple of nuances that I want to cover to make sure you guys fully understand this card. Now, if you're new to this channel in this series, we do this every week with the new cards to give you a very good idea of what it's going to be like and whether it's worth snapping, picking it up, buying it, or passing for another day for a different new card. So definitely snap, subscribe. But here we go with X-23. Her ability can stack in a single turn. So have you ever destroyed Wolverine twice in a turn and you ended up with 6 power, right? The first time you destroy him, he goes to 4, goes to a random spot, and then you manage to destroy him a second time, right? Or with Galactus, 1 location to the second location, he ends up with 6 power at a random location. It's pretty great value when you can pull that off. Well, with X-23, because she's a 1 cost, she's even easier to destroy, right? Killmonger. If we were to, say, on turn 5, play Carnage, Destroyer, Killmonger, because it doesn't matter where she goes, destroy her there, and then you're going to have 8 energy on turn 6. That is such a heavy-handed advantage over your opponent going to those final turns. So I think that's a pretty important thing to note, especially maybe you destroy her 3 times, 4 times, whatever allows you to do that. Like some crazy combos with Elysium or the locations, you know, can just destroy when played there. There's a lot of things that could happen to get this card destroyed. You could end up with a lot of energy the next turn. Altar of Death is a great example. That would be +3 just by playing her there. So good. Okay, another thing is when she's discarded or destroyed is not added to the destroy or discard pile. So this has a lot of implications, and I'm going to try my best to run through them. So the first thing is that Phoenix Force will not resurrect X-23. Phoenix Force is looking to pull a card from the destroy pile, and it will not register that X-23 was actually a destroyed card, similar to how it can't bring back Wolverine. Another thing is Death. So Death has its own little countdown for its condition to get discounted, right? It's not looking at the destroy pile to see how many cards were destroyed. Instead, it has its own unique condition countdown. And then lastly, from a discard point of view, Hela and Ghost Rider cannot bring back X-23 because it never entered the discard pile. It is not there. It cannot pull from it. So maybe that's actually helpful. You know, you didn't want to bring back X-23 off of your Ghost Rider, but maybe that other card and you were able to ramp into Ghost Rider, something along those lines. Who knows? That could be pretty nice. I don't actually think X-23 is going to be great in discard. I think it's more of a destroy card, but we'll get to that when we check out the deck lists. Okay, another thing is that it can regenerate to the same location. It's a 33% chance because there's 3 locations on the board, very similar to Wolverine once again. And then any power changes that that were given to the card or taken away, right? So if it got hit by Scorpion or Hazmat, or if it was buffed with Forge, right? Forge just got buffed recently, giving +3 or something along those lines. Those power changes will remain after regenerating, okay? So they're not going to disappear unless somehow X-23 got hit by Shadow King or you had Luke Cage to prevent the negative debuff. So the pros. Clearly the pros are outweighing the cons with this card. There's just too much to love about X-23. So repeat value in destroy lists, right? So if I play X-23, next turn I play Carnage, I'm going to have +1 energy to my next turn. Well, on turn 3, I could play a 1-drop like Nova and Killmonger because I have 4 energy. Now I've destroyed X-23 again. I've buffed my board with Nova. I don't have a whole lot going on out there, but it's decent enough. And then on turn 4, I'm going to have 5 energy when I could then play like Venom plus Bucky Barnes or something like that. Like it just starts to stagger like crazy. Of course, I have to draw like an absolute madman, but that just ongoing value essentially of having X-23 just be on the board. And if I have enough destroy activators, the ramp is just wild and working in a nice blend with the destroy package. Another thing in the discard package, it's free. It's completely free. It's bonus energy for doing nothing but drawing the card. It does take a spot, so I guess you can't say it's 100% free because you have to draw the card. It takes up a spot compared to something else, but you discard it with, say, Colleen Wing or MODOK, and boom, you just got bonus energy for the next turn and 2 power on the board. That's pretty great as well. But again, I'm not too sold on that package working with X-23 being an optimal position for the card. Another one is that it's cheap to play. So even if you wanted to run like a Khazar deck, right? A Zoo deck where you had a bunch of cheap 1-drops, well, you could just throw it out there because it's Killmonger tech. X-23 gets destroyed by Killmonger, your opponent's Killmonger. Yeah, it's going to go to a different spot, but they just gave you +1 energy for the next turn. Unless they waited until turn 6, maybe that's kind of clever. But like, I really love the aspect of actually just running X-23 in a deck with one other 1-drop that is high value, like Kitty Pryde or Nebula. And then that really discouraging your opponent from playing Killmonger because they don't want to give you that surplus of energy. So they hold on to Killmonger till turn 6. Maybe at that point in time, it's not the most optimal play for them. But this is a vanilla card with an upside, right? This is a 1-2 vanilla stat line, right? Misty Knight has that stat line. And I know that the devs like to think that they don't use those stat lines as guidelines, but every card that's been released has pretty well fallen under that condition. And this is just bonkers. It's a vanilla stat line with upside, which honestly brings me to a theory, okay? So we had Nova, a 1-2, giving +1 power to all the board, and it doesn't really matter the stat line because Nova is a card that you want to destroy. So what's the 2 power is like only if you play it and your opponent played armor, or it's a final turn and you just want stats on the board for cheap. So they changed it to a 1-1. I could see that happening with X-23. It would not surprise me in a month from now or so if we saw X-23 going to a 1 power card, because the value is still there, works very well with all of its synergies, right? The core of the card is still there, but you just kind of balance out the power output from, that free discard, that ongoing destroy value. So anyways, that a little bit of an early prediction there, but I could see that happening. Okay, so some of the cons. Okay, what are some cons to X-23? Well, it does regenerate to a random location. And the irony in putting this as a con is that it could actually be a positive, but it might not work with your strategy, which is why I put it as a con. So if it regenerates to Sanctum Sanctorum, well, that might be pretty good because you might have just straight up won that location because of that random spawn. But the problem being that you can't really play your Carnage, your Venom, or anything that you want over there to destroy it. You can maybe play Killmonger, but maybe at that point you don't want to because you want to actually leave the card over there at Sanctum Sanctorum. So the random location is a bit tricky, especially if it goes and flops to a location that maybe you had 3 cards at and it fills that location. Well, that sucks because now you can't really easily play another card there. Your opponent knows the amount of power that they need to beat. Gets tricky. Another instance is where maybe it falls over to a location where you have power. You have cards that you do not want to destroy. Well, you just don't. You just don't. That's basically all you do. Because if you already destroyed it once, you already got +1 energy and you got a 1-2 on the board. It's not that bad. Actually, it's really, really good. So this being a con, it's not that bad. Another thing is that it requires support for full value, but so many cards in Marvel Snap do. You look at Knull, he's a pretty good card. He's a 6/0 that requires a lot of support. So are these really cons? No, I'm kind of nitpicking. I'm trying to look for a little bit here and there. The other con I don't really have here, because we're going to get to the deck list, is the deck building aspect. I think it's a little bit tricky to find a home for X-23 that really genuinely feels valuable. But of course, I have brewed a couple up. But let's first talk about some counters to X-23. All right, so the counters. I mean, come on, man. I keep putting these here because we keep getting destroy cards, and I can't not. They're the best counters against those cards. So you got Cosmo, stopping the on reveals. Of course, that's good. It does counter X-23 despite her not having an on reveal, because all the other activators for destroy, except for maybe one or two here and there, but they all have on reveals. So that's going to completely brick those. You don't get to destroy X-23. That sucks. It also stops a lot of the discards as well. The Cosmo is just an inherent counter to X-23. Armor, Professor X, of course they are. If X-23 is stuck behind Armor or Professor X, it's not going to retain that similar value that you were hoping to receive from the card. It gives me a lot of Bucky Barnes vibes. Bucky Barnes is amazing value, plays into the strategies of your deck, but when you get armored, it feels really bad. That might happen a lot, especially early on when the card comes out. I'm telling you, armor is going to be everywhere. Professor X maybe less so, but that's still a really strong counter. Polaris is actually really sneaky. A lot of the destroy has a focus on the location that it's played at, aside from Killmonger, for instance. If you pull X-23 away, it's going to be really sneaky, really good play. It's actually, again, a really nice play to play Polaris to pull away Bucky Barnes from the destroy target. It makes it really awkward for the destroy player. Now, a couple of others here that I have that actually work with the card, but I also could see them being counters. So Wave is an interesting one, right? As you were ramping up in energy, you're getting more energy, you might want to play multiple cards in a turn. Well, Wave is going to kind of nullify the effect of the bonus energy. It's going to make it irrelevant. Let's say it's turn 3, right? And then on turn 4, you wanted 5 energy to play, I don't know, Killmonger plus Carnage or something like that. Well, if your opponent played Wave on turn 3, then on turn 4, you're going to have 5 energy, which is the same amount that you wanted, but now you can only play one card because everything costs 4. So in a way, Wave could be a bit of a counter, but not too bad. Death is another weird one. If your opponent is just running a control list with like armor and stuff, not actually focusing on destroying their own cards, but you're doing that, you're destroying X-23 on repeat and a bunch of other things, and they're just holding on to death and watching it get discounted like crazy, that could be sneaky. I don't know if there's a world where that works, but that'd be pretty fun to just run death as a tech counter. You could also kind of throw in Knull in there as well. But because X-23 has lower power, I thought death might be the more relevant of the two to have as a tech option. Anyways, those are a couple of counters, but again, really the top 3 are the main ones that you gotta look out for if you're playing a destroy list. But let's check out some deck lists. So the key synergies I've kind of already covered. We got Killmonger, but we also have Destroyer, which is so good. I think if we can ramp into Destroyer, we can play Destroyer on turn 5 because we have X-23 out there. We've been destroying it on repeat. We Destroyer, it's going to destroy X-23, giving us 7 energy for turn 6, where we play Knull and whatever else. I love that line of play, which actually brings me to the deck list on the right, Destroy Ramp. And the whole premise is that we keep destroying X-23 so that we can play Destroyer. We destroy a bunch of other stuff, whatever we need to, doesn't really matter. We're only planning on really winning the game with the 2 cards in Destroyer and then Knull afterwards. I also have a few other control style cards in here with like Atuma and Professor X. That's just such a good combo. And the backup is if Atuma ends up dying, it's not a big deal. It plays into our Knull play. And also Professor X with Daredevil to give us a sneaky way to find out where our opponent's going to play cards and avoid those counters. But another one is just straight up ramping with X-23 into Professor X. I love that. I love an early Professor X play, lock in that location, win it, focus your efforts elsewhere. And also, if we need to protect something, Professor X can protect a lane, win it for us, and then Destroyer we can play for free on turn 6 without worrying what we're destroying. So yeah, I think this could be a really strong list. Another one in the key synergies here is Galactus. Yeah, so you always want ramp into Galactus. You want to play Galactus hopefully on turn 5 so that your opponent hasn't had time to build up enough power to beat the Galactus power, 7 power, right? We got to get over that threshold to be able to activate his ability. But then also on the final turn, we need a big power play. We need to counter whatever our opponent's going to do, and usually that comes in the face of Knull. Knull is like that big, because we destroyed everything on the board. Knull is like 30 plus power. Boom, easy, big. Or Nimrod. Nimrod's another one that's pretty nice because you get a bunch of Nimrods over there, and then maybe we play Death for free probably because there's so many cards destroyed. So it's a kind of a standard Galactus shell. You know, you got the Green Goblin, you got Wolverine out there, he flip-flops, X-23 flip-flopping around. We would have to be concerned. We would have to be cautious with the amount of cards that are going to end up flipping over to the Galactus location. We might board lock ourselves, but that could actually work for the final turn if you end up playing Galactus on the final turn. I have Thanos here as well. I know it might look really weird, but my first time getting to Infinite was on the back of a Thanos Galactus list. It actually works really, really well. Just playing those stones gives you so much options, so much consistency to run through your deck. And if you don't have getting Galactus, Thanos is a nice win condition on his own right. We can destroy a lot of those stones to get a lot of power to buff up our Knull, discount our Death with the Killmonger plays, and then we even have Shang-Chi as a nice tech counter option if we need it. So I really like this deck list. I think this is going to be a strong performer moving forward. And then lastly, probably my favorite just from a thematic standpoint, we got X-23, we got Wolverine, we got Daken. It's the Wolf Pack, not the Wolf Pack, the Wolf Pack, because they're a bunch of Wolverines. Let's go. Now, the key here is kind of playing back to an old classic in Death Wave. But I don't have Wave, I've got Arrow. So Arrow was commonly run with a Death Wave because the idea being that you would have a free death to play. And then you would have Arrow, you pull, at the time it was all of your opponent's cards. We're only going to pull one. But if we could pull one, their big power play, let's say, over to a location that we're already winning, we play 8 power there with Arrow, and then we play a death at a different location, I feel like that's going to be really strong. Especially if we play Moon Girl in advance. If we can somehow ramp while destroying things into Moon Girl, double our hand, which might either double our Deadpools or our Deaths or our Dakens or whatever we need to double, it's going to be pretty much good value any which way you slice it. Then on that final turn, if I've got 2 free Deaths, if I've got, even 2 Novas to destroy on the back of Killmonger, if I got 2 Deadpools that have been just climbing in power, we're going to be in a really good spot. I feel like this deck list could be really strong and make a bit of a comeback. Now, I know a lot of these deck lists sort of blend together. They're all kind of just, different slices of the same pie with Destroy. But it's hard to kind of really innovate with a Destroy list. There's a lot of staples like Killmonger, Venom, Carnage. In this case, I feel like X-23 Wolverine just pair well together. They're doing the same thing. Nova. But I do feel like these are fairly different enough and seem really fun. Now, I know I didn't talk about discard. I will have a discard list in the article on snap.fan, so definitely go check it out. We'll have that out for you guys soon. So we'll have all of these and an in-depth guide on how to pilot them. Now, of course, the last card I didn't talk about in the key synergies is Lady Deathstrike, and that's because this card seems to be trash so far, but it does work with X-23, so maybe there's a world where Lady Deathstrike works here. I don't know. She does destroy it for free without needing a buff, so maybe not. In conclusion, do you snap on this card or do you pass on it? Well, I'm giving it the thumbs up. I'm saying snap. I think it's going to be a good card for many, many days to come. Maybe possibly nerf, like I said, to a 1/1. But the only reason I'm putting an asterisk on the big old green check mark there is because this is a Series 5 card costing 6,000 tokens. And it's very niche to destroy or discard packages, right? If you do not enjoy playing those decks, do not pick up this card just from the peer pressure of everyone saying it's the strongest one of the month. Save for another month. I'm super stoked for September. I'm personally saving till then. I might try to crack open a cache for this, but even though I think that it's a really good card, strong card, you should probably go for it, I might not personally go for it myself, just because I've been kind of falling out of love with destroy lists because they've been everywhere. It's just been too much destroy lately. I'm not having as much fun playing those decks right now. But if you got a lot of spotlight caches, that would be the course to action. I would encourage you to use spotlight caches on this week, not necessarily your tokens. I find they're the more rare, the more important resource. But anyways, there you go. Let me know if you plan on picking up X-23 in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will catch you guys next time.